Okay. Would appreciate if you could open your cameras so I can see more of you. Thank you. I think more camera would be better, but still we have just 20 students. Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's first start with the one point about the case study. First of all, I don't like it when you guys sending something anonymous here. So I don't see who is asking what and like answering what. And this is not very great here. So please try not to post anything anonymous anymore. And so we usually don't have anything to hide from each other. So yeah, so this is the first point. And the second point, in general, when we talk about the case studies, it is something that is graded. And you guys should be very careful what you are answering and what you're not answering and what you're asking here. And so far I couldn't find anything very so a question that needs elaboration here. Just maybe this point that there was like a point how we should show the results of PNL and so on. It's up to you how sophisticated you can make it. For me, it's just enough to have it like as a Panda data frame. So you can just print the data frame like a small Excel sheet. That's it's the minimum that you could do, but up to you if you want to use some HTMLs or some markdown tricks. It's up to you. Okay. So, any question on Piazza? Okay. Okay, great. Today, we want to elaborate a bit more on some visualization techniques. So this part of the lecture would be based on this book, Storytelling with Data. If you visit their websites, they have several books, workshops, and so on. So yeah, if you plan to work in an industry that you present a lot of things, maybe it's a good idea to just follow these guys. Yeah, otherwise for today, I try to just briefly go through the book and show you the most important things that I could show you from this book. And in the second part of the lecture, I'm going to explain a bit about Pandas time series, how some time series methods that you need to use as a finance student. And as a homework, we will go through a strategy. So basically, a long, short portfolio of something and then just visualizing it. And yeah, so let's start with the visualization. So this book is actually starts with the examples of bad graphs. So for example, there are just 3 graphs in the top that it is really difficult to follow if you just want to look at them. And then you can just look at the second line, and these are the same data, the same, just a different way of visualization. And that's make them much easier to understand the message behind this analysis and what do you need to transfer as your results of your study to someone that you want to explain your results and so on. And so if you're interested in the book, which I just put some important parts in the OLED as well, so you can read that. So there are several case studies and so on that you can just follow and see the examples. But yeah, as I said, I just want to go through an overview of the book. So the what the book says here is like there's 6 steps before you can tell your stories about the data. So first of all, you need to understand the context. For example, who's your audience, how much details you need to convey, and so on. Second step is to choose an appropriate visual display. So what kind of graph is the good graph? So for example, here we have bar charts, but the message could be easier transferred if we just use a line plot. Okay. So this is the second step. The third step, you need to find disorders or clutters in your graphs and remove them to make a better shape at the end. And there are some techniques in the fourth part that you could, you could focus the attention of people around you with some visual techniques. And then the fifth chapter is about think like a designer, which I don't like it a lot, at least for your case here. You're not designers, you're data analysts. So yeah, you don't need to make sure that this is like the most beautiful graph in the world. But yeah, it makes sense to think like a designer sometimes. And finally, you're gonna tell this story. And I'm just focusing in the first 3 chapters and one slide on the fourth. But yeah, for the fifth and sixth part, you could just go and read the book if you're interested. And just one disclosure, today's session, it would be more like an MBA class. So it's not very university style, it's more MBA. It's about how you just want to talk with your clients in the future. And yeah. Okay. So first, so regarding the context, it's important to notice that what I'm talking today, it's not about EDAs. So when you're doing exploratory data analysis, you just need to explore everything, and it's for you or some other colleagues to just go deep to the data and analyze the data for your own understanding. Okay. But if you want to explain this data to someone else, then you need to move away from the EDAs and you need to go to explanatory analysis. And usually when you do explanatory analysis, you share the results of your study and not the insights about the data usually. So that's why it's important for you to identify your audience, and you need to decide how much details you need to communicate. And based on these 2 things, you can prioritize the message that you want to convey. Okay. So this is the graph that I showed you last time. So basically what this book is about is this slide document, which is like a slide and document kind of combination. So this book is focused on this part, but what you need to do for this course is assuming this. So this is not exactly what you need to do in this course. But in your future careers, you usually need to go like in the middle of a presentation and a written document. And then, so you need to know the tools that you have in your arsenal. So sometimes it's enough to just show a simple text and you don't need to visualize something. And then you have lots of graphs. So there are just some of them here. So you could go with the tables, heat maps, scatter plot, lines, slope graphs, bars, and waterfalls in a square area. There are much more that are not in this book, and I think you have them already with the Seaborn and Plotly that we explained in the Monday. Okay, so about the simple text, as I said, sometimes you just don't need to complicate the story that you want to make. So it's about one number that you want to tell, and yeah, it's easier to just reduce the information process that your audience need to have. So you just say that this is just a 20% of children had this issue, and that's it. Okay. If you want to have a lot of data for several kind of audience, so if you have, for example, some people from several nationalities in your audience, and so you want to have some numbers in one column on USD and one column on Euro and so on, it makes sense to use tables. But other than that, tables are just very complicated and nobody will look everything in a presentation when you present a table. Okay, so everyone is interested in a certain row or column, and that's it. Yeah, so in a live presentation, it makes sense to just make a heat map. So just simply add some colors. If you want to show the difference between something or conveying a message, it makes usually sense to use a heat map instead of a normal table. Next is the scatter plots that they're usually used for showing the relationship between two variables. And the good thing is that you can usually use some horizontal lines or vertical lines and separate based on some colors and so on. So it's just one graph, but you can convey several messages with just one graph. And that makes scatter plots very useful. Next is a line plot. So it is usually used for continuous variables. And the good thing is that you can always have some summary statistics along the line. So here there is like a minimum, maximum, but you can also have like 95% confidence intervals of your observations and just make the plot. So this is also, there are ways to just make it more efficient. There was a question or? Yeah. Another type of graph is a slope graphs. It's usually when you have two time periods and you want to see if there is a relative increase or decrease in certain variables. So for example, in your case study, maybe it makes sense for some of the P&L elements to just show them across the year, across some years. So for example, first year and second year and so on. And if you're interested how to do this kind of graphs in Python, there's a link that use Matplotlib to draw this kind of things. And yeah, next we talk about bars. So the most important thing that you need to notice when you draw bars is that you need to have a zero baseline. So this, for example, the first thing is just the same data, but cutting from, not showing from the zero, it gives you like a sense that there's a huge increase between the first and the second bar. And it's usually not ethical to show such a thing. So usually when people do this, they want to do something unethical, and it is a bit dangerous because if someone spots this in your audience, it will ruin your credibility usually. So that's why it's very important to have zero baselines always. And the other thing is you can use the stacking if you have several subgroups in your data, but the most important thing here is usually you need to put the most important subgroup in the first row, because if you put it in the second row or above, it's really difficult to just do the comparison anymore. And and usually you can also use a 100% total thing, and you can just play around with that. This makes at least easier for the last and the first subgroup to show the things and compare things when you have like a 100%. And finally, it's important to have enough free space between the bars. So usually half of bars thickness is roughly good for having them. So usually you shouldn't avoid thin or very thick bars. That's I think obvious anyway. So the next thing is waterfalls. So usually if you have a bar and it's included from several variables, or there is a process into that line, you can make waterfalls. And there are two ways, at least I found interestingly, to create nice waterfalls in Python. And yeah, for some softwares like Excel, I guess there is not a waterfall specifically created for Excel. What you can do in these cases, you can just have some bars and make these outer sections invisible, or just make them white color. And then, yeah, you can just create waterfalls in a non-straightforward way. So, okay, I didn't know that. So apparently in new Excel versions, there is waterfalls. So the good thing, yeah, usually when I talk about Microsoft products, I never use any of them since years. So that's why I'm not very updated on Excel or Windows or anything. But thanks. Yeah, and sometimes you need to show you need to compare things that have different magnitudes. So in this case, it usually makes sense to use a square area, or some people call them waffle charts. And so basically, for example, there is an example here. So there we have like 100 interviewee, and then just 9 of them have some conditions. And it's easily, you can just show that there is a difference in the magnitude here. And you can therefore use square areas. And also there is a nice way to show it in Python. There are some more tips on types of graphs. For the pie charts, you usually can convert pie charts to bars and or lines. And this is much more straightforward to understand them. But nevertheless, if you want to use pie charts, you should make sure that there's always some labels on that. So otherwise, the eyes could make mistakes in finding which one is bigger or smaller. So you need to always put the percentage on the sections. And yeah, you usually could find bar plots that could replace them easily. So first thing. Second thing, you should never use a 3D chart for a two-dimensional visualization. So for example, this graph that I am showing you here, so it just adds some visual difficulties for the audience. So try to avoid this three-dimensional charts unless you use the third dimension for something else. And the third thing is about the secondary y-axis. Sometimes, so it's usually makes sense to make two subgraphs, subplots, and then use two subplots instead of one plot with secondary y-axis. So here in the left, it's yeah. So you can just, there are like two ways. So first is that you just draw them and label them directly. So instead of a second y, you just label them directly. And yeah, this is the other way to make two subplots. Yeah, otherwise sometimes there are like just this line will be on this part of this bar chart, and it makes it very ugly and difficult to understand what's going on there. Yeah. Now we can go to decluttering. So there is like, for this chapter, the book has lots of visual concepts to show you. but I just try to make it just one case study. So, I can explain some of the important stuff just by showing the example. So assume that we have first this graph in the top, and then, so we need to remove some disorders in order to reach the lower part, which is a more beautiful and easier to grasp information. So the first thing you need to do is to just remove the borders, because our eyes could understand that there is something different. When they see a graph, we can understand that there is like an area about the graph. So we don't need usually borders to separate them. And then second thing is that you can remove grid lines, because here the message is that there is a difference between the blue and the red part. So you don't need the exact levels, okay? At least you don't need the levels before the may, okay? So this part, we don't need them. So that's why you can easily remove the grid lines. And then this ticker, these markers on the data points also unnecessary. So that's why you can also drop them. Next, what you can do is you can clean the axis. So for example, instead of, so there are like 2 digits extra always here. So it just make it more difficult to read. So you can just clean it here. Also, you can just have a three digits January, February, March, and you don't need to have the whole name. And next, instead of legends, you can directly name your graphs. It's also make it more easier to understand what's going on there. And finally, it's just to make sure that there's a consistency in the colors. So you just make them the same color. Okay. So this is just one example of decluttering. So in the book, you can see much more. And yeah, when you do these kind of things and you just make your eyes sharp to these clutters, after a while, you can just create much more beautiful figures. And next, just want to show you some techniques that you can use in your graph to like focus the attentions where it should be. And so, for example, most important things in the scatter plots, you can use a size difference. So if you just want to focus on one point in your scatter plot, you can just change the size of that specific point, or like just hue it with another color. That's the most important thing. There are the other ways. So for example, you can enclose some parts. So you just put a rectangular around some points, and when people look at it, they first go to there. And there are the other things as well, but you won't use them very often. Yeah. So there's just one introduction to this book. If you're interested, you can just go and read it. Yeah, it makes sense if you have the plan to be like a consultant in the future. It's very important to know this kind of stuff. And they have, I guess, when they employ you, they have lots of this kind of classes that they will train you on this. No. I just need to. Okay. Any other question? Okay. So I think you can just mute yourself, so I can mute everyone. Okay. Great. Now we can go to the second part, which is yeah. So I just want to remind you of some important time series techniques. you should have known them by now, because last session we had lots of time series focus with the MPL Finance library, but still, yeah, let's start with this. So what I'm teaching today is like based on chapter 8 of the book, the Python for Finance Mastering Data-Driven Finance, that is already on OLED. And yeah, so first of all, we need to import Panda and NumPy, very standard. And I created one data frame for you already with some prices. So I just forgot which bank, but I guess there are like two banks. So the one is Morgan Stanley and the second is I forgot it. But anyway, so there are two stocks so there are the close price for Morgan Stanley and FE that I just don't remember the name again. And it's from 2000, so the first working day of 2000 until the end of 2020. And yeah, so someone says FE is first eagle, could be. I just don't remember. I don't know why I chose this to show. I just created this graphs, this notebooks a year ago, so I just planned for everything. So that's why I sometimes forgot what I did. But anyway, it doesn't matter now for now. Okay, so first of all, you need to tell Pandas that there is a date column in your data. And to do so usually this date column, so for example, what I have here is not a date variable, but it is just a string. And you need to convert the string to a date variable. And for that, there is a Panda method. So you can just say to date time and your date variable, so whatever it is, and the format it has. So for example, in this case, we have year, and then there is a dash and months and another dash a day. So you can just create the format based on what you have in the data and just say Panda to date time, it will create a date time for you. So what I'm doing here, so I just want to say that, yeah, there's a Panda date time for this column, and just replace it with the same date column that we had. So now this date that we have here is a date variable. And if you index it, you just created a time series. So basically just say this, the index should be df date. And yeah, so basically you have date as index now and the prices you have. Just for housekeeping, if you want, you can drop the date because you don't need it anymore. So you can just say drop this column. An axis one means that we need to drop a column, not a row. So if you just do this, we get the, yeah, we just get a clean time series. So the first method that is very useful is diff. So basically, when you use diff, so you just see the change among the observations. And then if you just compare the diff version with the normal version, so you can see that for the first, there's always none available because there's nothing in time t-1 for the first column, for the first row. That's why it is none available. But after that, you can just start seeing the change. So for example, FE for the 4th of January, you can see there is 0 because basically there is no difference in these two columns and these two numbers. That's why we got a 0. For this, there is a -10 here, and you can see it here. So basically, and this does the same for the whole Panda data frame. Okay, and you can just have the shift. So you have the diff variable here. And if you want to have a diff of 2, so you can just see the 2 days difference. But it's you just need to keep in mind that when you have a bigger number, you have more rows with non-available observations afterward. Okay. So first this. The other thing that is usually very important to use is to use a percentage change. So basically, you can just have the absolute change. You could also have a absolute percent. So you could have also a percentage change based on the previous one. So this is basically, so I just multiply them by 100 to just make sure that they have percentage change. So first it was 0, but the others is just as a percentage. But I just don't remember what was exactly. So if you open the documentations, I just want to see what was the formula behind this. So I think it just create the difference divided by the previous cell. So that's the way it calculates the percentage change. And then you can just, it's still a data frame object. So you can just do whatever kind of plots that you had in mind with, and you are doing with pandas. So I just, for example, want to plot a line plot of the percentage change, and then you can see for both FE and MS. Yeah. Now let's create returns variable. So there are 2 ways to create returns. So the first one is the log return. So you basically use the ln of price t plus 1 divided by price t. And the other way is to just have a normal return. So pt1 over pt minus 1. There is an article just discussing what's the difference of these 2 things, but I think for you guys should be very standard. So just the basic argument is that if these 2 numbers, so pt plus 1 and pt, are very close to each other, then this log return and the return things are the same. So it's just based on the mathematic Taylor expansion that you can just create. So basically, these 2 should be replaceable, but this is more standard for people to use log returns in academia, at least what I saw. Okay, so for the log return, so one thing you can do is just to have this df over df shift 1. So you can just, so the shift is also like very similar to the diff. So shift is the same data frame. Let me show you the same data frame, but just moved 1. So let me show you. So for the df, so we start from the 3rd of January with 22. The shift version of 1, it's just make everything shifted by 1. So this 22 and 135 that we saw in the first day, it's now in the second day. And then this is like a way to just, yeah. So you could also have minus shifts. So basically, bring everything up. So here, 125, this row would be appearing in the first row in the shift -1. So just for you to know. So as I said, this is one way to just measure log returns. So just t plus 1 divided by t, or t minus 1 or something like that. The other way is to just have like a normal return that is like price of t and price of t minus 1 and the whole thing minus 1. It's also the same. Okay. Now I just want to explain a bit about resampling. And by resampling, I mean, you could change the frequency of the time series that you have. So for example, if you have like an annual time series and you just want to make the monthly or the other way around, so you can say that I just want to resample my time series based on business days frequencies or weekly frequency, monthly, and so on. So just want to give you an example. So the current data that I have is a daily data, okay? And if I want to have it as a monthly, so I could just say that resample by M, and M is here means months and end of month frequency actually. So it gives you a time series that is based on the end of the month. And what it does, it takes the mean of the whole sample that it had. So basically, so end of each month, and we get the average of the price in a month. Okay. The other way to do that, you can take the mean, so the minimum of the months, you can take the maximum of the months. Yeah. So just mean, minimum, and maximum, as far as I know. So this is down sampling. So what do I mean is that you have like a higher frequency and you want to go to a lower frequency. So we had daily and now we have monthly. So it is very straightforward because you can just say take the mean or minimum or whatever of the monthly data and create one observation for a month. But if you want to do upsampling, you will end up with some non-available observations. So for example, the same data frame, if I want to resample it on a second or millisecond or hourly, for example. Oh. Yeah. So if I do upsampling, so basically now for each day I have it hourly. So from the 0 hour until 24 hour, and that's why I don't have enough observation usually, and it will end up with non-available observations. And in doing so, you need to tell Panda that how to fill these non-available observations. So there are many ways to do that. So basically you can do a forward fill. So it use the previous available data and make a copy in the next cell. So for example, in this case, I had, so I used the first observation that I had, and I just filled the non-availables with this same observation. What you can do is a backward filling, which means you have the second observation and fill all the previous ones, or you can just use the nearest if there is like anything in the nearest possible. So the first half from the first above and the second half from the second observation. and so on. There is also a method called interpolate. So you can basically also interpolate the missing variables. And there are, so I think that the default is a linear interpretation, but there are some polynomial ways of doing that. So basically you can say just yeah. So here you don't get the same number anymore, but just assume that there's a line between the days and then fill it with this linear way or any higher polynomial. Okay, no question. The next thing is rolling. So sometimes you need to just create a window of several days and do some calculation based on the windows. So here you can see that, for example, I just want to roll a 20-day windows, and for each observation, I just see the last 20 days average. So it starts from the 20th day, and just let me. Okay, so what I'm doing here, so the first two columns were the original data frame that I had, and then in the second two columns, I have a rolling average of the last 20 days. So it is missing for the first 20 days because there is there's not enough observation to take the average. But after the 20th days, you can see, for example, here, this 30 is actually the average of the last 20 observations here. And usually sometimes you need them. For example, if you want to create a form of French portfolio, so you need to calibrate your model based on some last 2 years, for example, or whatever. And then you can use this the variable that you have for the future. So that's the usage of rolling usually. And many technical analysts usually use things like simple moving average. So it is basically a rolling window of so if you want to have like a 200-day simple moving average, you just say I need a rolling of 20 days, and I take the average of that, and you call it that. Now I just want to review some of the most important visualizations of the time series. So we had them already in the Plotly. So as you just remember, you can import the Plotly Express and PX and just say I want to have the PX of a line chart or whatever. And this is my data frame and what is the X and Y variables. And then you say, just show it. So again, this is our data frame. And then we just want to have a line plot. And then you have a date, then Plotly Express understands the dates as your x-axis, and it's usually very flexible with that. So you can just say I don't want this and I want to see this. So Plotly is a great tool for interactive visualizations. And then you can work around with the x-axis. So there are like lots of things you can do with the x-axis, and all of them are documented here. So you could just go through them, but I just show one important, just interesting thing. So you can just change, for example, the calendar to another calendar. So for example, I just want to see the Persian calendar. So the years is not Georgian anymore, and it will be like just the Iranian calendar. So there are like, if you just go to the calendar here, you can see that there are many other ways. So you can have the Chinese calendar, Ethiopian, Georgian, Hebrew, Islamic, Jalali, and so many other calendars. So you can change the colors. Yeah, I just don't want to go through all of them, but yeah, if you're interested, you can just see what other changes you can make to the axis and create the plot that you are interested in. The other thing that you can add is, for example, this range slider. So you can say that, for example, I want the range slider here. So I just want to have this first 10 years, something like that. Or you can add some years here. So for example, you just want to have a 6 months year to date, or 1 year, or all the sample. So it is also easily plottable here. And you can also create several graphs, what they call it multifaceted figures. So you can just say that based on the ticker, I just need a new column. So you can just create subplots based on the ticker. So one ticker this, and one the other tickers this, and you can just yeah, create an area chart like this. Yeah, the other way to do that is Plotly Go. For this, I have another data set. So there is like, it's for Apple, open, high, low, close, volume, adjusted. And so I don't know what is the end, moving average, and so on. But so this is just I just want to show you the candlestick, how you can create the candlestick graphs. And as I said, it's like Plotly Express. So you can just say, I need a range slider there, and so on. Okay. So I hope, so I think this is a very easy thing, basically a repeat of what we had last time. And now I just want to start with this homework. So for this homework, you can also start it yourself. So let's go through it together. So so what we want to do here, we want to develop a trading strategy based on simple moving averages. And the strategy that we have here is, if a 2 months SMA is greater than 1 year SMA, then we should buy it. So we go long. And then if the other way around, we go short. Okay, so basically, whenever two months SMA is lower than 1 year, so we just compare these two things and then decide to go long or short. So I download the Apple data from 2010. Okay. So first of all, just plot them to make sure. Okay, so this is Apple from 2010. So, and now I just want to create 2 lines for so for a 2 months SMA. So for 2 months, we have 42 days of working days. So I just get 42 days SMA. And for a year, we have 252 working days, trading days. So I call SMA2 as 252. And then I just create the SMAs basically by rolling of the window of the same size and get the average. Okay, so I just add SMA1 and SMA2 based on the closing price. And just want to show it to you. Okay, so as you know, for the first year, we don't have anything because so we have missing data for the first year of our observations when we do the rolling for 1 year. But after that, so the green part is the longer SMA, and the red one is the shorter SMA. And then what I'm doing here, I just create another column, and this column track our position. So we create, so first of all, I drop the observations before 2001, I guess, 2011. So because there are non-available observations, so I drop now, and then I create a position column, which is by default 0. Okay, and then so I need to go long when the shorter SMA is bigger than longer SMA and vice versa. So what I do is to, so let me just show you what do I mean here. So this is our data frame, the whole data frame. So we can just condition on those rows that SMA1 is bigger than SMA2. Okay, so this is just those rows. So there are 2,000 of these rows having this condition. And we can also have the other way around, and just 500 days the other way around. And then I just want to say for the data frame that has this condition, the column position should be 1, and the column position for the other way around should be -1. So basically, we go short here, and we go long here. This is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it that I like it more is to use numpy var. So with numpy var, we can just basically do the same. We can say var SMA1 is bigger than SMA2, put 1, other way around, put -1. Okay. There's just a very tiny difference here. And I don't know if you could notice. If anyone noticed, just open mic and tell me. Don't be shy. So in the chat, we have, yeah, exactly. As you said, the only difference is when they are equal. So in the second part, if they are equal, they are still getting -1, but in this case, they remain 0. That's the only difference. So, but if I do this, then yeah, would be like this. The other thing I can do is to just, it's like Excel. So I could say or here instead of -1. I just do another NP var. And this in this NP-var, I say -1 and 0. Yeah. Now these two things are equal actually. Okay. Good. Let me, okay, how our position here. So here, so the secondary y is the position, is the track of the position. So it is 1 here because basically the orange part is bigger than the green part. And here is the vice versa. So we get -1 and the other way around until append. Okay. And we can just have the same with Plotly, and just it's easier to follow here. So you can just focus on here, and then you can see as soon as there is a change between the so the green is bigger than the red, so we just go short, and vice versa. Okay. Just for your information, so this is the way that you can just create subplots. So basically, if you want to have a second y, secondary y in Plotly, you just need to import subplots, and then say figure 1 is this, figure 2 is this, and for figure 2, you update the y-axis. And then you say, okay, add the trace of these two figures and then create just this subfig together. Okay. So, Samer, you can just open your microphone so we don't have so you just open your mic here. So where do you want to get the Zoom? Ah, okay. Okay, great. So now we need to do the back testing. So we just want to see basically if our strategy is making money or not. Okay. What we do here, so we don't have any transaction costs here. So we just basically assume that there is no transaction cost. And we first create a return column. So we use the log returns and we create the returns here. And then our strategy, so we basically so this is the return that is like normal, it's a normal return, and then this is the return specific for our position. So if so based on the previous position, we just see what was the return. So basically, if it is a positive, it's a long, so we got a positive return based on what we had for the return. If it was a short, then we have a -1 in front of the return. So just to create the strategy returns, and then what we need to do is to just cumulate. So basically, we just sum them. So here, so we have we don't need this. We have just Yeah, so basically we can just compare our cumulative sums based on this normal returns, and based on the strategy. We can see that our strategy underperform a bit, and we can see where it was the case, actually why it is underperform. So basically, as you can see here, until 2013, both were very similar. So after 2013, our strategy is much better, working a lot better until here. So I don't know what happened here. So that's why after this point, our strategy starts, so it went down a lot, and it couldn't reach to the normal returns anymore. So this was just one wrong decision here, and that's why it's in general doesn't perform better. Okay.
One question. So this just accumulated, so that would be without reinvestment, right? How would you go about if the returns would be reinvested into further stock?
Yeah, you can just make it more difficult. So this is a very simple version of that. So basically we just sell and buy. So we don't do any other thing here. Yeah.
Okay.
But for your third case study, you need to work with this kind of stuff because you have a data set on Robinhood, and then you need to create a trading strategy based on the Robinhood users. And yeah, so this was just an introduction. For sure, you need to go through it and find more sophisticated versions of trading strategies. Okay, cool. Actually, I'm very fast today, so I don't know when I'm usually in the class. This is the same material. And I'm finished today for today, but I just want to, so I want to stop the record, and then we can have a talk about the presentations that we will have later on.
Sorry, could I ask one more question?
Sure.
Isn't this supposed to be our homework as well? What are we supposed to do as the homework?
You don't need to do anything for homework. So usually when we have Thursdays, so it's like a very short time until Monday. So I don't want you to just go through a new homework. And as I showed you in the first session, now we are in the second quarter of the course. So we won't have that much homework anymore. So it's more about you focusing on your case studies. And yeah, so it will be the case. So I will have more teaching. So I will give you solved codes. So like this. So this is still a homework, but it is already solved. So you just need to have them, go through them, and if you need them, you can easily. Now I think you're able to change whatever you want, and you don't need to practice hard coding that much anymore. So there is a question regarding. So let me stop the record, I think.